It's time to meet the first three of our talented guests in this Meet the Voice Actor section. Firstly, Peter meets Seamus Bryner from Delaware, USA, who, after being inspired growing up with the legendary David Hayter's performances playing the Solid Snake character in Metal Gear Solid, he decided to have a go himself and has found much success in a variety of animation work.
So, hi everybody, my name is Seamus Bryner. I'm a character voice actor, but I specialize in villains and comedy roles. Some of the bigger projects I have done, Dr. Call, Whispers, and The Rare and Supermast.
For heaven's sake, what's got into you? There is not a soul here. Did you find anyone?
I've done Larry and Seamus, respectively. He was named after me. With the creator, we got on so well, he decided to change the name and return to Rapture.
So this is Little Timmy's workshop. Throw some junk in, and you'll get your precious resin.
Hello, Alex. This is Seamus speaking. They told me you were going to be a problem. Now, I see you're going to live up to your reputation. Well, that's fine by me.
This isn't quite out yet, but Slore from StarCraft II's soon-to-be-released UED First Light campaign.
There is no great prophecy foretelling of your liberation. There is no fatal weakness for you to exploit. There is no deliverance, no reprieve, no escape, no future.
And that's just some of the big ones that I can still talk about right now.
Absolutely, yes. I know some of these things are so hush-hush, aren't they? You can't mention them at all. Well, we're honoured to have you on our training programme, Seamus. So when did you first discover you could do all these kind of voices and stuff and actually enjoy it and earn money?
Honestly, I've been interested in this kind of stuff my whole life. Like growing up watching cartoons and movies and whatnot. And I was the youngest of three sisters, so it was a matter of I could make them laugh, maybe they wouldn't beat me up that day or something like that, you know? So I was always impersonating character voices and all that sort of stuff. My biggest inspiration is David Hayter from Metal Gear Solid, who plays the character Solid Snake.
This is Snake. Colonel, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's the situation, Snake?
Ever since I was little, I've always tried to do that voice, and it's kind of like followed through. And recently, I was just like, actually, over the past year, I've been like, hey, well, I'm going to actually dive into this thing. I'm tired of just thinking I could do it, and I want to see if I actually do it. So I built this vocal booth and got my mic set up, and it's been smooth sailing ever since, luckily.
When I lived in the city, I hadn't the slightest idea that I'd been robbed by bandits on its outskirts. It's simply too ghastly to imagine.
You think there's just ghosts and devils out here on the seas? Well, let me tell you something. If he finds out what you did, they'll be the least of your concerns.
Yeah, so who was your British inspiration for your British accents then? Who did you copy or emulate?
I'm not entirely sure. Like, I love, people like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and that sort of stuff. Like, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so Gandalf, I guess, very deep, old-style British, where you could, you kind of, swirl your mouth around a little bit when you're talking. But besides that, yeah, I mean, it depends on which kind of British you're talking about. I mean, you would know. Out of all, there's a million different dialects and stuff like that. So,
I know. I'm what they call RP, received pronunciation, sort of BBC British or Southern, I suppose.
Very formal, very official, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah, exactly. See, that's another thing I want to talk about eventually was the movements with the mouths, how important they are for people, sticking in that position.
And you have to move your muscles and hold things in a certain place. It's a very physical thing, isn't it? Doing character
It is 100%. A lot of people wouldn't guess that. They think you just walk into here, then you just say a few lines and that's it. But no, you've got to emote. You've got to do this, that, the other thing. Just don't hit your mic. That's the only thing.
That's the thing. Yeah. Well, give us a little bit of one of your characters now, which has a lot of physicality in it, and show us the kind of thing you do in the booth.
Okay, yeah. So anytime one of my default characters, I don't have names for them per se, but I just refer to them so one of them is a goblin. It's a really common one I always do. But
when you talk forward, you lurch like this, and you can't hit your mic too hard.
And it just kind of, I don't know, something about that physicality of it. It switches it instantly over into that voice, into that character. It's great.
Yeah, and some people use trigger words and phrases as well, don't they? Or springboards. Do you have any of those as well?
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I actually learned about that from I was hired to do an audiobook, and the guy said, Jafar from Aladdin, he was like, this is the biggest inspiration for it. And I forget the actor who played him, forgive me, but he was saying how, I was watching some interviews with him, and he was saying how there's a few terms you come up with that are like the soul of that character. And for Jafar, he was always like, absolutely, your majesty. And he would say that before he recorded every single line, and it immediately like pulled him into that spot. So that's something that I always try to focus on. And you'll always hear it when you're like going through, you're like, hey, this is the one that syncs me up with everything.
Yes. When I'm asked to do a really posh upper class voice, I say to myself, I say, old chap. Or something like that.
Exactly,
and your mouth goes like that, doesn't it? It's really weird. Like, it goes like that.
100%.
I say, old chap.
But it works. It works lovely, I do say.
Yes, we still have some princes left in our country. But yeah, Prince Charles does that. I say. So, so that's really unusual. So it's interesting you don't give them names. You just have, do you have faces in your head or something like that.
Yeah, I'm a really visual learner, like through and through. So I always like if I get something from a client or a casting director, if they don't send me it immediately, like a picture of the character, I'm like, can you please like send me that my way? Because you can tell a lot about somebody from their face. It's like, do they have scars? What kind of hair do they have? Do they have hair? Are they old? Are they young? Like, what is it? And that immediately, I mean, it all goes, you got to get to know the character.
That was spectacular. They were scared to death. Huh? Who could it be this late? Trick or treat! Ah!
That was the best Halloween ever.
Too right.
And of course, you're only as good as your script as well, aren't you? Did you get some scripts?
100%.
Would you have to adapt or ad-lib around and clients don't mind you doing that?
100%. And it's not necessarily like the writer's fault or something like that. Because, I mean, you know that when you're in the vocal booth and you're recording, sometimes like you'll get into the flow of things and then you'll hit one word that's just like, oh, like that's not what I thought they would say at that time. That's just weird. So you have to physically like readjust yourself and whatnot. So, I mean, anytime I run into something like that, unless it's for like a live feed, like something like this, or then I kind of just talk to them, I'll always send them the one that they wrote, and then I'll send them the one that's like, this might be what you wanted. But you have to include both, because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're actors. We're not the directors or writers, so we can't make that kind of call, you know? And
no,
I'm sure that you've seen the...
Do you think that's because they think we'll ask for a writing credit as well? Do you think it's that?
I think sometimes that's part of the thing, and I've worked with people that have been that way, that they're straight up like they get very defensive about it, and I'm like, I'm not. You do your thing. I was just throwing something your way in case you wanted to do it. But I think what it is for us as voice actors is like we're in a booth for like 10 minutes and they're writing it for like 2 years. So they're like, don't tell me how to make this character, you know?
No, I was reading one of the Simpsons voiceovers thought of a few gags while they were recording and they didn't accept them, even though they all laughed at the time because it was all sort of boxed off or something. It must be difficult in a situation like that. I mean, not that they need any more money.
Exactly, that's true. Yeah, Nancy Cartwright could buy some more like Islands Made of Gold with Dan Castellaneta or something. Yeah, it's something that you can do on the cheap until you get to like the higher contract jobs, and you're like, okay, well, I need to up the ante. I need to get better microphone or better sound dampening or that kind of thing. But I started off on websites like Fiverr and whatnot, just freelancing. But it's a really good way. Like a lot of people in the industry are like, that's a bad thing to do. But I mean, the landscape has changed a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that people need to do as much voice work as they can. Like, and this is the best way to get it. Because a lot of the time when you go for a job, just like if you apply for a job after college, you're like, okay, do you have the experience? Do you have the degree? And you're like, well, I don't have any of that. So this is a great place to meet people, get your name out there, and you just get voice roles more consistently. It's nice, yeah.
Have you done any dubbing work at all, where you've sort of done English over a foreign language cartoon?
Yeah. Like so actually, when I was talking about for a Supermass, that's actually a Spanish cartoon that's being pitched around over there, like in Spain. And that's why if you look that up, like you'll notice that some of the lip sync might be off and whatnot. That's just because, I mean, Spanish tends to be more romantic and drawn out than English, which is very like blunt and forward, you know. I have done some dubbing work besides that as well, but it's always for like smaller cartoons that people have pitched and whatnot. Not a lot of studio stuff. And for games and whatnot, that's always like half the time they run it through that that part of the engine that adds lip sync to it automatically. As long as there's an emote happening, it'll do that, so you don't have to worry about the syncing too much.
No, you're absolutely right. And of course, you have dubbing studios as well, where things are looped round and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's really hard to, like, dubbing is, I think people underestimate that. It's kind of like a bad name, because, I mean, I'm a big animation fan in general, and I used to be like, oh, I'd rather watch the sub than the dub, but now that I'm voice acting, I prefer to watch the dub every time, just so you can, like, pick something up or something like that. And, I mean, what I do is I'll have the, let's see, like the source cartoon up on my like laptop when I'm recording, right? And I'll actually go into like Adobe Premiere and add in like little cues, so I know, okay, line's coming up, 3, 2, 1, because that's what they do in actual studios. They'll do the thing, you know, where they give you the signal, like the clicking in your microphone or whatever, Yeah.
Well, let's talk technical then. If you use Premiere Pro as I do, then did you record the voiceovers separately in Audition and bring it in, or do you actually record in Premiere Pro? Because you obviously can do that.
You can. I don't record in Premiere Pro just because, I mean, it's a video editing interface and it's so locked onto that. And but Audition has always been what I've used since Jump Street, like years and years now, even for like small projects and that sort of thing. But I've learned a lot more over the past few years. It's just impressive how expansive that is. But there's a ton of free stuff people can do when they're starting out. I think a lot of people get discouraged about voiceover work because they're like, oh, I need this, I need that, I need da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, I mean, I've got this room completely padded with, like, moving blankets. And there's
really removal van blankets. That's
exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they're thick enough that it works. Like even a microphone and whatnot. I mean, I started off with a $100 microphone, and now I moved up since then. But it's still a matter of like you can start small if you want, I guess, is my point.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. What mic do you have now, as a matter of interest?
Right now, I use a Rode NT1. I actually just got that recently, and I upgraded my interface because, like so my first mic, it was an AT2020. So it's a $100 mic, but I did get the XLR one. And I had a Scarlett Wright interface, and now I upgraded like a few months ago to this Audient ID4, and it's like a world ahead. But you got to get to that point.
Absolutely. All right, well, it's lovely to speak to you. What's your final piece of advice then for any newcomers who have got a good voice and think they can do some characters? Where do they start?
I would say, again, check out these freelancing sites. And the biggest thing that I think most people struggle with in any medium when they're trying to get into a field is they're so terrified to make even the smallest mistake because it's going to they're like, oh, it's going to torpedo everything. Don't worry about that. Like, this is something that everybody's going to make mistakes. You have to learn. You're never going to be perfect at it, you know, and like even masters and whatnot are still learning things. And have fun, because this is literally like the most fun job on earth. We get to bring characters to life with our voice across like every medium. It's fantastic.
They are petrified. Now for the finishing touch.
Cal! Behind you!